Talktainment Radio Worldwide South. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Okay, good morning. And welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and you're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is going to be radio the way it should be heard. Again, thank you. Okay, again, thank you for listening, and we apologize for the background noise, but we did correct that. And got an interesting show today. And if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And if I can get to them, then I will try to read them, and we will have Mr. Fuller address whatever the concern that you have. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and as usual, I will ask you, how are you?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Boy, that is the truth. Before we get started today, what are the concerns that are on your mind, or situations, rather, that you would like to address first as we delve into this program?
Well, most of the news is still about what we call police brutality. I'm trying to get people to stop using the term. I say that, a police officer is not brutal. A police person is a person that helps to produce justice. A police person, male or female, tries to do the correct thing. Anytime you're not trying to do the correct thing, anytime you don't have the correct intentions, which is to help to produce justice, which is balance between people, which is to guarantee that no person is mistreated, and to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's what the job calls for. Then that person is not a quote-unquote police officer. The person is a law enforcement officer, but law can be used to produce justice or not produce justice. So I say we need a better term for law enforcement officers who are enforcing a law that should not be a law. In other words, an outlaw who is acting as an outlaw. And so a term that I have in my counter-racist word guide is the term race soldier. If the person is a racist, I say that's an armed person who is acting under the guise of a police officer that is doing non-justice, promoting non-justice, mistreating people, not helping the person that needs the most constructive help, and does not intend to do so. That's a race soldier, and that we should isolate that person from what we call the police department, just by the language itself. Language is very important. Words are important. When we say the police are brutal, I mean, there are a law enforcement officers who consider themselves to be police officers who have the correct intention, and they say, well, they're talking about me. I never mistreat anybody. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to help people. That's why I joined up. I don't want to shoot anybody. I don't want to arrest anybody. I just, I just like people. I like all people. I like to, to be of service to people. I like to get my awards, based on how much service I'm rendering and whatnot, and protecting people. I wouldn't, I'm a person. I grew up, and I went to school and whatnot, and I got beat up, and I had people mistreating me, and I was tired of seeing people being mistreated. So, therefore, the person might say that I decided I would become a police officer because I was tired of seeing people that I was around always being mistreated, either by people just out on the street or by people who were wearing a uniform. I've seen that too, so I decided that I would get in a uniform. So there are a lot of people who, when they went into what we call police work, take that position. So you don't want to lump them in with, some people say, a few bad apples, but it might not be a few. It might be a whole bunch of them. But
yes.
The thing about it, you want to put a different label on them altogether.
Yes,
if
sir.
the person is a racist is a racist. A racist is a white supremacist. A white supremacist has no duty. A white supremacist has no allegiance to anything other than the system of white supremacy. A white supremacist doesn't believe in being a member of a nation. The white supremacists are a nation, collectively, the most powerful nation on earth. And so just because a white supremacist puts on whether it's a janitor's uniform or firefighter's uniform or law enforcement officer's uniform or no uniform at all, just walking down the street, or maybe a business suit, a white supremacist is a white supremacist is a white supremacist is a white supremacist. They're not Americans. They're not Swiss. They're not African. They're not Jews or Christians or Hindus. A white supremacist believes in one thing only, white supremacy.
All righty. So we're dealing with race soldiers or race soldier, and we want to isolate that from the term that has been put on us, police brutality. If you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Hopefully I can get a chance to turn my device down so that it doesn't come across the air. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question or statement that you'd like to make? Go ahead.
All problems are solved. All problems are solved through questions and answers. So I had a small problem this morning, like what I was going to eat for breakfast, and I answered it. But now I have a bigger problem, which is white supremacy, that I haven't solved yet through questions and answers. And I was just wondering, does the weight of the questions and answers have to weigh as much as the problem in order to eliminate it? In other words, if there's a problem as major as worldwide as white supremacy, am I going to need like so many questions and answers in different languages from everybody togetherness in order to eliminate this huge problem of white supremacy?
Mr. Fuller?
Well, if I understand the question, all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. I don't know of any problem that was ever solved by not first asking a question and then seeking an answer to that question, and then the problem was solved through that process. I don't know of any problem anywhere in the past, currently, or I anticipate in the future that can be solved without first raising a question. First of all, what is the problem? Or is there a problem? And if it is, what's causing the problem? See, all questions and answers. This is why people say we sometimes solve problems by going to court. And when you get to what they call quote unquote court, what they do in that court, every court room I've ever been in, is all a matter of what? Questions and answers. Somebody asks a question, or two questions, or three questions, or 2,000 questions, and they try to seek answers to those questions. Who did what? What do we do now? What's the best way to go about it according to law? What's the best way to go about our proceed from this point on? Shall we adjourn now? Or shall we continue this case? Or shall we make a judgment now? Hold everybody here. How many people are going to be on the jury? And who are we going to put on the witness stand? And when we put a person on the witness stand, what's the procedure? Well, we're going to ask that person on the witness stand, since that person is a witness, we're going to ask that person some questions, and we anticipate we will get some answers. And if that person can't answer the questions that we have, we'll put another person there, then another person, then another person. Then we will ask some people called a jury. I mean, questions again. What do you all think? Go in that room over there to the side, talk it over. Ask yourselves some questions, and try to come up with some answers, and then come back in here and wrap this thing up, because we have been deliberating too long here. That happened when I was a juror once, assigned as a juror in a case. The judge sent back a little note saying, what's the holdup here? I mean, seems like you all can come to some decision. Now, the judge was asking a question. See what I mean? So we had to come up with some answers. So it's all a matter of questions and answers all over the world, all day long, and try to come up with the most constructive answers to the questions, and then that way you get the most constructive solutions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before I let you go, caller, would you have another question?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your concern, and hopefully Mr. Fuller address it for you. Thank you. Okay. You are listening to the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively, and I emphasize exclusively, on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. He's the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy. And one of the most profound statements that I've ever heard is one that he makes every time the program comes on. And it simply says this, quote, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you, end of quote. He wrote that in 1971. And it is a fact. If you really do not understand racism, what it is and how it works, you are just headed yourself down the road of confusion. And it's something that's just not just for this program 1 hour a day or 1 hour a week. It's something that is before us that you really have to think about and see what it is, define your own definition, and then see how it works. And the picture will become very clear to you. Okay, let's go to line number 2. Line number 2, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your concern?
Greetings, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. This is Brother Warren from New Orleans. I want to ask Mr. Fuller, are there any movies with predominantly black cast that you can recall were great lessons learned? You often mention movies as great tools of learning lessons, and I can think of one, Harlem Nights, with Richard Pryor and Red Fox and Della Reese, and I think that that movie teaches a lesson on how to strategically think and know the people that you're up against and how they're always looking at you. And I was just wondering any movies you can think offhand with predominantly black cast where lessons are taught.
Not specifically, other than that had predominantly black cast. Some of them did, I think. Sounder is one.
Okay.
With Cicely Tyson. That's one. And also there's a movie called Nothing But a Man. It's sort of an obscure movie. Came out in the early 1960s, I think. Okay. And with Ivan Dixon, I believe he was the principal male character in the movie. Those two movies, I think, have a lot of lessons in them. I always look for the lessons in the movie. And most of the movies that I recommend don't have, I would say many of them don't have any black people in them at all.
Okay.
But I do recommend them for the lessons that are universal, because I think that all lessons should be universal, should apply to anybody, anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, if they're really solid lessons. And there are some what I call universal lessons. I think a lot of them are expressed in a movie called The Hustler with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason. It's about pool shooting, but it's not about pool shooting. It's about a lot of other things. If you look for the lessons in the movie, then a lot of them are war movies, you might say, what you call movies mostly centered around World War II. From Here to Eternity is one. This TV series, Band of Brothers. There's a lot of lessons in that series. I think it's a 13-part series. Then there's a series about the Roman Empire where you can learn a lot, called I, Claudius. I think it came out in the 1980s. It's very obscure, but people, it's 13. I think it's about 13 parts to it, about 13 hours. But you can, without reading a long history book, you can probably get the series, and you can learn a lot from each one of those episodes. You just learn the fundamental things, I mean, that can lead you to constructive thinking. What they call critical thinking.
Right, constructive thinking.
Yes.
All righty. My brother from New Orleans, did you have another question before we let you go?
No, I think the answer was outstanding.
Okay. Hey,
very informative.
All right. Thank you very much for your call, and we welcome you anytime. Thank you so much. Okay, brother from New Orleans. Got a see an email. Oh, by the way, again, this is for Galen. You're listening to the compensatory concept, heard exclusively on TalkTeamRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard. Our guest, as usual, is Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And by the way, speaking of the book, you can get that book by going to producejustice.com. Is that correct, Mr. Fuller?
That's correct. Right.
Okay.
They have some copies now that are available. It was down for almost 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Right, but there are copies available now.
All right.
On that site.
All right. And you said there's an additional book with that, or you can get an additional book?
Well, no, that's just a basic textbook, and then the additional book is called a Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide. Shows you how to use words.
Okay.
How not to use words. What questions asked when people use certain terms that are used. Just like earlier this morning, I said about race soldiers. And I'd like to say something else about race soldiers.
Yes, sir.
You never call anybody about any kind of name except the name that the person want to be called. That's the name or title. But you can, in the case of a racist, rather than ever calling anybody a racist, which you should never do, unless the person says that he or she is a racist that you're addressing, never call a person who you suspect of being a racist as being a racist.
Okay.
Use the term racist suspect. Now, it's the same way with what we call so-called police officers who are really racist.
Mm-hmm.
You don't call them race soldiers. That's a term that I invented. You call them race soldier suspects or suspected race soldiers. Right,
yes.
And a person says, oh, well, are you calling me a race soldier? Are you saying that I'm a racist? Say, no, sir, I'm not doing that. No, ma'am, I'm not doing that. But I suspect you could be one by the evidence that has been presented.
Okay.
And therefore, if you are one, you are the enemy of justice.
Mm-hmm.
But we will investigate and find out whether or not you fit that description.
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean? I hope that somebody investigates.
Yes, sir.
Because it's not supposed to be any such thing as a race soldier anywhere on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. We have a question from, her name is Darendra, if I am pronouncing it correctly. I'm not going to give her last name. But she says, I am of East Indian descent. I was born in Guyana, South America. My ancestors were brought to the Americas as indentured servants under the British Crown. I heard a past show with you and with Mr. Fuller that said Indians were allowed to have slaves. Well, anyway. I also heard that the African American community say that Indians are your business there and not helping the community. I think those are false statements. How could we profit from the people that share the same fate as us? East Indians are everywhere in the world, not by choice, but as servants. And then she gave a link to that shows or proves her point, which I didn't read, I didn't look at it, so I'm not going to look at it at this time. But if I do look at it, and then I'll discuss it with you, Mr. Fuller, over another line to see if that's okay. Anyway, she says, P.S. Guyanese, black, and Indians are now the majority in the British Parliament. So we started to make changes to the slave system. You care to reply to that, address that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Okay.
The lady said she was, quote, unquote, East Indian.
Yes.
Now, see, here we have more confusion, see what I mean? Because a lot of these terms originally came from the white supremacists, okay? So I was talking about a particular tribe, really, the Cherokees, in what they call the Western world. The Cherokee tribe, they were told by the white supremacists, you can have Negro slaves. In fact, we insist that you do. You be in partnership with us in having slaves. Now, the Indians said, well, what you're saying that the Cherokee Indians, I'm not talking about East Indians. I'm not talking about people, quote, unquote, originally from India. I'm talking about people who were always in Georgia and Florida and Alabama, what they now call that, and that they were dislocated into what they call Indian territory, a place called Oklahoma. And they were forced to go there. And they were told that they could have Negro slaves. And then many of them took on the Negro slaves because they were copying the ways of the white supremacists. And so at a certain point, many of these so-called slaves, the Negroes, from what I understand, many of the Cherokee Indians said, well, really, we don't want to use people as slaves, so what you can do is just join the tribe. So some of them did, some of them didn't. So that caused more confusion, which the white supremacists always cause confusion. Just here in the terms we are using now, East Indians, West Indians, Native Americans. Those are three separate categories altogether. But these categories came about as a result of whom? The white supremacists. So we have to really watch the ways the words are used. I mean, when I say Indians, many people think that I'm talking about somebody from Calcutta, when really I'm talking about maybe some people who are called Apaches, who originally did not even call themselves Indians, because Christopher Columbus called people that he found in what he called the West Indies, he called them Indians because he thought he was in India. All right? According to history books that I've read.
Yes, sir.
And so the people said, no, we are Arawaks, and what's this Indian business and whatnot? You're Indians because I said so.
Wow.
and that's typical white supremacist arrogance.
Okay.
They put whatever label they want to put on you, and that sticks.
Okay. All right. Well, Ms. Deandra, if I am pronouncing your name correctly, Mr. Fuller did address your questions, and if you would have your concerns, and if you would have any more, you can certainly call the show by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can continue to Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Okay, let's go to line number 3. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. You can be heard. What is your question?
I took some classes on racism and inequality, and I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller. A white student stood up in one of the classes, and he was like, this was a white male student. It was like the problem, with this whole race thing is that the way he sees it is that, like, the average black man wants to use the white man's system, wants to use the white man's money. He's like, the average black man wants to live in the white man's neighborhood. He wants to marry the white man's daughter. So it's very difficult for him to even see a problem with the issue because he was saying black men are part of the problem. Like, if things were reversed, he was saying that black men would be treating white people the way that white people are treating black people because they kind of think the same way. And if he was saying black men don't see white people as enemies, as like, a problem. He's like, most black men respect him. He's like, the average black man respect the average white man. They want to, get information. They want to be associated with them. He's like, oh, the rich black men, build houses in white men's neighborhood instead of building their own neighborhood.
Okay.
So what does Mr. Fuller think about all of that?
Okay, Mr. Fuller, we have a couple of minutes, about a minute and a half.
Well,
Go ahead.
I didn't get the essence of the question.
Okay, ma'am, could you would you condense your question so that he can answer it, please?
I took a class on racism, and a white student said that the average black man wants to be like the white man. The average black man does not have a problem with the white man. He respects the white man. He wants to be like the white man.
Okay, this is the average black man your class is
saying. This is the average black man. So he was saying there is no way to solve the problem because black men respect white men. They don't hate them. They don't see that. It's like a dysfunctional, abusive relationship where you like your abuser, you respect your abuser. So how can you get out of the situation if you see your abuser as someone that you look up to?
Mr. Fuller?
It's understanding white supremacy. And if you understand white supremacy is an evil system, and we shouldn't have an evil governmental system nowhere on this planet. The planet, the people of the planet should not be investing in evil doings. The system of white supremacy is an evil doing. It's an evil system. Why? Because it's designed to mistreat people. So a lot of the victims of racism, naturally, we follow into it. We are raised in it. The system was already in place when we were born. So we adopt a lot of the ways. We believe in murder. We glorify murder. Non-white people, we kill each other. We get guns. We glorify guns. Why? Because the white supremacists said we should glorify guns. That the gun is a wonderful instrument for killing people.
Okay. Hang on, Mr. Fuller. Hang on, caller, because we're going to go on the other side of the break and address the rest of that. Talktainmentradio.com. Check us out on WCRS FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet because we go where you go. And don't forget that Talktainment Radio is radio the way it should be heard. Okay, more of your calls. We're going to address the second part of the question. and more emails right here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
TalkTainmentRadio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is TalkTainmentRadio.com.
La Glory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. They've got everything you need. The famous La Glory burger, chicken and waffles, shrimp and grits, walleye, perch, and whiting, and fish dinners, all Southern-style food.
Oh, boy, what good eating!
La Glory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Be sure to tell them that All in Our Family sent you, and you will receive an extra side dish with each meal. La Glory Soul Food Cafe, a taste of Southern classic, located at 3350 Allegheny Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. For carry-out, call 614-237-5844. Get the menu at LaGlory'sCafe.com. Open 7 days a week.
For the best eating in town.
Goodwill is a global social services enterprise and the leading nonprofit provider of job training programs and career services in the United States and Canada. To pay for its program, Goodwill sells donated clothes and other household items in more than 2,700 stores and online at shopgoodwill.com. Goodwill uses the revenue earned from these sales to fund job training, employment placement services, and other community programs. The goal of the campaign is to increase goods donations to Goodwill, inspire an emotional connection to the Goodwill brand, and to elevate preference for Goodwill.
We can give you a new heart.
We can help you walk again.
We can perform brain surgery.
We can treat a sore throat.
We can bring life into the world.
We can work so many miracles. But the one thing we cannot do is read your mind.
When you communicate with your doctor,
when you ask us more questions,
you reduce your risk of suffering a medical mistake.
Tens of thousands of lives are lost every year due to medical mistakes.
The healthcare community is working on it, but you can help.
Please, open up. Ask more questions.
What are the side effects?
When should I expect my test results?
Will this medication interact with my other prescriptions?
We can't answer if you don't ask.
Help reduce your risk.
Questions are the answer.
Learn the 10 questions you must ask. Visit www.ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and the Ad Council.
Supporting minority education. I'm Sean Booker, dammit, from The Melting Pot. I'm here to tell you that as the mother of a high school senior, I know due to financial circumstances, many of America's deserving minority students do not have access to a college education. Since 1944, the United Negro College Fund has sought to provide one. Since 1972, the beginning of this campaign, UNCF has helped more than 300,000 talented students earn a college degree. I'm Sean Booker, dammit. Give a helping hand.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. I encourage you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
brought to you by Autism Speaks, the Ad Council, and TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Go ahead. Make my day.
You got the power.
All righty. Welcome back to the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. That's the world's greatest radio, and it's also radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, and we're with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we started off the show by talking about race soldiers, which has been interpreted by some or been programmed by some to call it police brutality, but Mr. Fuller at the beginning of the show made a distinction to that. So as we try to educate the public or the listeners, on that, that's what we are trying to do. You can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can email me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and if I have time, I will try to get back to the questions and then have Mr. Fuller address them for you. Okay, still learning. Caller, did you have another question before we move on? Wait a minute, we can't hear you. Is there? Okay. No, Ed, I can't. Wait a minute, we're working on that. Just a moment. Okay, go ahead and speak now.
I just wanted Mr. Fuller to finish what he was saying.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Yes. What was it she said now?
Go ahead, caller. Could you repeat your question?
I wanted to ask you because I was concerned after taking that class on racism, and the white male student was talking about how he sees black men's respect for white men and how they kind of are condoning the system.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So he was saying that how can you solve a problem if you look up to your abuser and you respect your abuser, and they want to be like white men, they want to use his system, his money, they want to marry his daughter. So how can they fight a system when they want to be a part of it?
Okay, good question. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Oh, well, you're automatically a part of it because you're born in it. And the analogy, the setting that I use to kind of illustrate the point is that we're all born in prison. The system of white supremacy is a prison system. And if you're classified as non-white and you're anywhere on the planet, you are automatically born in prison. And what we call jail, nowadays, or stockade or whatever, is what, in my book, what I call a correct analysis, is that's called greater confinement. You're confined at the time you're born, and you're in a prison system, and you are classified as non-white, you come under the system of white supremacy. So you have to always operate within the confines of the prison system simply because you're born in prison. The white supremacists took over the entire world. No one of color escaped their wrath, their domination. So they set up an entire system of mistreatment based on white and non-white. And they say if you're classified as non-white, you're eligible to be dominated and being mistreated by anyone who is classified as white. White people were also born into the system. And as toddlers and whatnot, they didn't know anything about, white and non-white and making a distinction and whatnot. But little by little, they are taught. By the time they get to be 10 years old and whatnot, they have just blended in right into the system because the system is already in place.
Mm-hmm.
It was established, and it was established in all 9 areas of activities. economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, this system should be replaced by a better system. Now, hypothetically, since we've never had it, what would be a better system than an unjust system called racism, where you dominate and mistreat people based on color?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a license to do that if you're classified as white. Well, hypothetically, a better system for non-justice would be what? Justice. And so what is justice? You just guarantee that no person is mistreated and guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, which is what should have been in the first place.
Right. Okay. All right, caller. We hope that, and that's all we have time for that one. We hope that that helped you and that Mr. Fuller addressed that concern for you. Thank you very much for your call.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about that, Mr. Fuller, there is a book that helps address what you are saying. It's called The Wheat Money, and I looked at that, and it really addresses that last statement that you made about about the system and how people feel or privileged in a system or how they became like that. And I suggest that along with the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a book that you wrote, I also suggest that if you have a chance, look at Wheat Money, The Wheat Money, and it will help explain a little something for you or give you a better understanding, because after all of us are still learning. Okay, a question from Bartholomew. I'm not going to give his last name, but he's from Houston, Texas. And he says, Mr. Fuller, if America is about justice, and he capitalized that, and also in quotations, that white supremacy claims to be, why is it America in recorded history they fought so many wars and still fighting wars in now these foreign countries where there are dark-skinned people that are poor instead of producing justice in these poor countries? They are killing and stealing from these poor people. Is that justice? Guaranteed nobody is mistreated and guaranteed that the person who needs help the most gets the most help? Is that supposed to be justice? Is that supposed to be America or Mr. Fuller? Do black and white folks, especially black people, protesting and marching with signs saying no justice, no peace? And I'm reading it just as he is. Mr. Fuller, how is it America that's supposed to be about justice, supposed to do justice and or produce justice, don't do justice and or produce justice?
Well, if I understand the question, first of all, the use of the terms, America has nothing to do with non-justice. America is an excellent concept, just like Africa is an excellent concept, just like Asia is an excellent concept. They're the three A's. They're the three big ones: America, Africa, Asia. Now, what do these words actually mean? When you say America, when you say Africa, when you say Asia, the only logical, and I always say follow the logic. Logic came with the universe. The correct definition for all three of these terms apply to people. What kind of people? America, Americans, Africa, Africans, Asia, Asians. What kind of people are you talking about? Since all three of these things apply to people, you're talking about people who practice justice. If you don't practice justice, it's impossible to be an American. If you don't practice justice, it's absolutely impossible, logically speaking, to be an African. If you don't practice justice, it's absolutely impossible to be an Asian. Not going to happen. See, we need the correct definitions for words, okay? So what do you have on this planet? Do you have Americans? Do you have Africans? Do you have Asians? The answer is no. Why? Because you don't have any people who practice justice anywhere on this planet. And why is it you don't have people who practice justice? Is because you have one system of government that's already the dominant government on this planet. And what is the name of that government? It's called the system of white supremacy. That's the only government on the planet. There is no American government. That's an excellent concept. Everybody should be trying to be an American. Everyone should be trying to be an African. Everyone should be trying to be an Asian. And when you put those three together, the three A's, African, American, Asian, you have what we call universal man and universal woman at their very best. And they would be, by definition, people who practice justice and correctness all the time without fail. People who guarantee that no one is mistreated, and people who guarantee that the person who needs help gets the most constructive help.
Gets the most constructive help.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you don't have any of these people nowhere on the planet. On account of what? On account of the system of white supremacy. That's what.
Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Bartholomew in Houston, I hope that addressed your concern. Okay, you're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard. And if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can email me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Okay, let's go to line number 1, and you can be heard, and you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question?
Mr. Fuller, you've seen the United States on the rise, at its peak as a superpower, and now in decline. It looks like China is surpassing the U.S. technologically, economically, militarily. Do you see a point where, or do you think it's possible that white supremacy would change if the United States were to become a less global power and more insular as China gains more power and influence in the world? Do you see white supremacy losing its impact under those circumstances? Or do you think
Here again, if I understand your question, there's only one United States. That's the United States of white supremacy. There's no United States of America. The United States of America is something that everybody should be trying to produce. It's an idea. It's a wonderful idea. Why? Because when you say United States, what does that mean? It means united people. Each person is a state of being, B-E-I-N-G. Each person on the planet is a state. So when you say United States, you're talking about united people. Of what? United States of America. But America doesn't exist because you can't have America and white supremacy on the same planet at the same time. Everybody, and I'm going to repeat it, should be doing everything that he and she can do in all areas of activity, each minute of the day, to be what? An American. Why? Because an American is a person that does justice. But you cannot have justice and white supremacy on the same planet at the same time. It is totally impossible. There's only one government. I'm going to go back to saying it again. There's no government. There are people who call themselves Chinese. There are people who call themselves Europeans. There are people that call themselves Africans. There are people that call themselves Native Americans. None of these people really exist when you start talking about the word justice. Why? Because the white supremacists do not permit it. Now, if you say that there are people who are getting stronger and more intelligent and fighting against racism, the answer is yes. But it hasn't been done yet.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get justice anywhere on this planet as long as you have a system of white supremacy being the dominant system on the planet. Now, everybody should be trying to get rid of it and replace it with a system of justice.
Yes,
sir.
Not
any type of other system than a system of justice. There are some black people who say, well, we should replace white supremacy with black supremacy. That's just running around in a circle again, because you're talking about another form of what? Of mistreatment. I mean, what's the point in changing shoes? I mean, if you're going to get the same result, with no bottoms to the shoes, duh. So you want to change the entire system of government that you have in place with a government that we should have had in the first place.
In the first place, right.
Right.
Caller, before we let you go, did you have another question for Mr. Fuller?
Yeah, just one quick question.
Okay.
And we live in the universe. The universe has produced many possibilities. Has the universe ever produced a system of justice that we know about?
All right. Thank you for your call.
That question was what now?
Whoa, I let him go. But I think he said, has the universe ever produced a system of justice, if I remember correctly?
Not in recorded history. I haven't heard of one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one that's embellished and set up as a standard for everybody in the world is what they call the Roman Empire. That's supposed to be the example for everybody.
In recorded history?
Yes, in recorded history. Well, when you look at the Roman Empire, my goodness, everybody should be fleeing that.
Whew.
You're talking about ancient Rome?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody should be trying to get as far away from that as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who will put all it in the history books and whatnot and build monuments to it and say, oh, this is the example for everybody. Everybody who ever lived, everybody who ever existed. Look at all the wonderful architecture. Look at the aqueducts. Look at the paved streets.
Or the city governments, senates, and so forth.
I mean, look at all the city-states and whatnot. Look at all the philosophers and whatnot that came out of ancient Rome. And then you say, yeah, look at Caligula.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that.
Caesar. Look at even Caesar Augustus, who was one of the originators of what you call the Roman Empire. Look at Tiberius. Look at Nero. I mean, hey, are these examples? Everybody waltzing over to the Colosseum? I mean, to see people fed to the lions? Are you kidding?
No.
This is something you're supposed to teach young people? This is why we have a lot of the chaos that we have and all of the murder that we glorify.
Right.
Because Julius Caesar was known as what? A mass murderer.
A mass murderer.
I mean, he was a soldier. I mean, hey, soldiers are supposed to be a necessary evil. See, I've been in military uniform myself. That's supposed to be considered a necessary evil. Nobody should ever really aspire to be a soldier. I mean, to just go around killing people for the sake of killing. Like to hear gunfire, explosions and whatnot. I mean, get out of that soldier's uniform as fast as you possibly can and pick up a plowshare and produce some food so you can nourish somebody. That should be the ambition of everybody who is a soldier.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fuller, this is why I love the statement that you made at the beginning of your book and also at the beginning of the program. And I'm hoping that all of our listeners really take heed to that. And you just simply said in your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. You clearly wrote, it said in 1971, quote, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. To me, it's just that simple. You have to understand it. Get the book, read it, and reread it. You will learn something every day. Because if you don't, then you're going to be headed down the road of confusion, and you don't want to do that. You want to try to understand this every day. Okay, let's go to line number 3. Line number 3, what is your call for Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr.?
Hello?
What is your call, or what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, my name is Tyreek. I'm from New York. I basically have a statement now. Listening, I had an original question, but listening to the previous callers, I'd like to add that universalism, that one thing that Mr. Fuller has in his book, is something that people overlook also. And I'd just like to read it. It says, any universalism, any one or more persons thinking, speaking, and or acting to promote the revelation of truth and using the truth revealed in such manner as to promote justice and correctness at all times, in all places, in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, and sex. And also, a lot of people are confused about many terms about white supremacy. They don't like to acknowledge that there's a difference between racism and white supremacy and prejudice, and they mix it up. And a lot of times they use so much emotion that they don't take the time to understand and to research. And so I have Mr. Neely Fuller's book, and I was one of those people who saw the title and thought it would be so complex to understand. But once I listened to his show and read the book, I realized how simple it was for everyone to put in place what he has in his book. And so I appreciate what you do on this show. And I just like to say for people to receive the book, and not only that, but to look up the definitions and Mr. Fuller's own definitions on racism, white supremacy, and prejudice, because they're different meanings and people confuse them, and that adds to why we're in the same rut. Because of confusion. And as Mr. Fuller said, and as you just said, Mr. Bobby, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, it will only confuse you.
Okay, what it is and how it works. Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to line number 1. What is you are now on for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
I'll make my question real quick. When a black person is engaged in an argument or a dialogue about race with a racist suspect, and another black person might decide to step in and come to that racist suspect's defense, what's a good tactic to kind of get around the black person and stay focused on the racist suspect? And that's my question.
Okay.
I'll take it off the air.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
What is a good topic to get around?
Well, how do you get around that? That and answer the question that was put before you by the person, by the other person.
A good tactic. I'm sorry.
Good topic. Okay.
Yeah, a good tactic, not topic. Tactic.
Oh, tactic. Okay.
A good topic.
Sorry.
A good tactic.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I don't understand that word.
Well, caller, can you kind of condense the question real quick because we're running up against the time?
What was that word?
The tactic. What's a good tactic to use?
Yeah, or strategy. I'm sorry.
Tactic. A good strategy to use. The strategy is anything that works against non-justice. It's real simple. Everything is either going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. Just every move that you make, ask the question. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. Is this move that I'm going to make right now going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect? Anytime you do anything constructive, it's working against the system of racism, because the racists believe in being nonstop destructive. That's the way they are, even when it appears that they're doing something constructive. Their whole thing is to be non-constructive when it comes to non-white people. And just always say, well, just raise the question. This thing we're fixing to do today, the next 15 minutes, is it constructive or non-constructive? And if it is going to be constructive, how?
How?
See what I mean?
All right.
How is it going to be constructive, and to whom?
All righty. Thank you, caller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. TalkTameRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. This is radio the way it should be heard. We will try to get better, try to answer more of your questions or concerns. And we, again, thank you for listening, and we welcome all your calls. TalkTameRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com.